Okay, so you want to own a high-end art gallery. Rent a beautiful white room in Chelsea or Mayfair. Hang a few enormous paintings on the walls. Pour expensive champagne. And wait for collectors to walk in and spend six figures before lunch. You discover the next great artist, sell their work for 10 times what it cost to produce, and become the elegant middleman between genius and wealth. That's the picture in your head. That's what the art world is designed to make you feel. Here's the problem. Almost none of that is how this business actually works. Let's start with the illusion, because the illusion is doing a lot of work here. The global art market moves tens of billions of dollars every year. A single painting can sell for more than an entire gallery's annual revenue. The top galleries represent artists whose work appears in museums, biennials, private collections, and auctions watched by people who never ask the price out loud. From the outside, the margins look obscene. An artist makes a painting for a few $1,000s. A gallery sells it for six figures. The arithmetic seems almost insulting. Big numbers. The kind of numbers that make a person look at a white wall, a polished concrete floor, and think, I want in. But here's the part nobody tells you. A high-end gallery can sell millions of dollars of art and still lose money. The headline commission is usually around half of the sale, but that money is not profit. It has to cover rent, staff, art fairs, shipping, insurance, storage, framing, catalogs, private dinners, unsold inventory, advances to artists, and the long stretches when nothing sells at all. In a strong year, an established gallery might keep a healthy operating margin. In a bad year, it can burn through cash while the art on its walls becomes more valuable on paper. So how does a business built around taste, relationships, and objects that may never sell create serious fortunes? That's the entire question this video is going to answer. And the answer has almost nothing to do with the painting itself. Let's start with what you're actually buying into. Because high-end art gallery is one of those phrases that describes several completely different businesses sharing the same white walls. There are four doors you can walk through. The first is the primary market gallery. This is the classic model. You represent living artists, help produce exhibitions, place their work with collectors and institutions, and split the sales proceeds with the artist. The gallery is not simply selling objects. It is building careers, controlling access, and creating a market around a body of work that may not yet have one. The second door is the secondary market dealer. Here you buy and sell works that already have a history. Paintings by established or deceased artists, works with auction records, provenance, and recognizable demand. You may purchase a work from a collector and resell it at a higher price, or broker the transaction for a commission. The margin can be large, but the inventory cost can be enormous and the legal risks are much sharper. The third door is the international mega gallery. Multiple locations, major artists, museum relationships, art fair booths, publishing departments, private viewing rooms, and a client base spread across continents. This is less a shop and more a financial and cultural institution. It can absorb a slow month because it has several markets operating at once. The fourth door is the specialist gallery. Photography, contemporary sculpture, old masters, design, prints, African art, Asian art, emerging artists, or a specific historical movement. Specialization can create pricing authority because the gallery knows more than the generalist. It can also trap the owner inside a market that disappears when collector taste moves. Same white walls, for completely different businesses. Now let's talk about what it actually costs to get through the front door. This is where the fantasy usually dies. The first cost is location. A high-end gallery wants to be near wealth, collectors, museums, luxury retail, and other galleries. That means expensive neighborhoods where the rent is based on what the address signals, not on how many people walk past the window. A ground floor space in a major art district can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars a year before renovation, utilities, insurance, or staff. Then comes the build-out. The room has to look effortless, which is the most expensive aesthetic in the world. Walls must be reinforced for heavy works. Lighting needs to be calibrated. Climate control matters because humidity and temperature can damage paintings, wood, paper, textiles, and photographs. Security has to be discreet but serious. Storage may need specialized racks, fire protection, and environmental monitoring. You are not renting a room. You are building a controlled environment for fragile assets that may be worth more than the building. Then comes the staff. A serious gallery needs directors, salespeople, registrars, installers, art handlers, researchers, preparators, communication staff, accountants, and people whose entire job is making wealthy collectors feel remembered without making them feel sold to. A small gallery may run lean. A high-end gallery cannot look lean. Scarcity is part of the product, but so is confidence. And then there are the art fairs. Frieze, Art Basel, TEFAF, Independent, Paris Plus, and dozens of regional fairs are not optional if you want access to the serious market. A booth can cost tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars before shipping a single artwork. Add travel, hospitality, installation, insurance, invitations, dinners, catalogs, and the opportunity cost of taking your best inventory out of the gallery for a week. A fair is not a trade show. It is a compressed, expensive test of whether your relationships are real. And that's before you've acquired any art. Which brings us to the part where the real money starts moving. Inventory. Everyone assumes a gallery does not need much capital because it can sell art on consignment. Sometimes it can. Consignment means the gallery displays or markets a work without buying it outright, then splits the proceeds with the owner when it sells. This protects cash. It also means the gallery is often carrying the entire cost of selling something it does not own, while the owner can take the work back whenever the relationship or price changes. The other model is outright purchase. You buy the work, own the inventory, and hope the market agrees with your price. This can create much higher upside, especially in the secondary market. It can also tie up millions of dollars in paintings sitting in climate-controlled storage where nobody sees them. Here is the trap. Art inventory does not age like normal inventory. A clothing retailer can discount a jacket and clear the rack. A gallery cannot easily mark a major painting down by 40% without damaging the artist's price history, upsetting existing collectors, and telling the market that the gallery misjudged the work. The gallery may quietly hold the piece for years, waiting for the right buyer, while insurance, storage, financing, and opportunity costs keep accumulating. The art can appreciate and still be a terrible asset if the owner cannot convert it back into cash. This is the sentence to remember. In the art business, value is not the same thing as liquidity. A gallery's cash cycle is also strange. The gallery may pay an artist in advance before an exhibition opens. It pays for production, framing, shipping, photography, catalogs, and promotion. The collector may negotiate payment terms. A museum may take months to pay. An international buyer may need export documentation and financing. The gallery spends months creating demand before it knows whether the show will produce cash. A sold-out opening can be a cash flow disaster if the works are expensive to produce, buyers pay slowly, and the gallery has already promised the artist a share. Revenue exists in the ledger. Cash does not. So you've committed to an expensive address, paid for a staff and a fair calendar, and tied up capital in objects that cannot be discounted without consequences. How does anyone make a living doing this? Here's where the whole picture flips. Because the money is not where you think it is. The obvious money is the commission. In the primary market, the gallery commonly splits the sale with the artist, often around 50-50, though the exact arrangement varies by artist, medium, reputation, and production costs. Sell a painting for $100,000, and the gallery may appear to have earned $50,000. But that $50,000 is gross revenue, not profit. Out of it come production advances, shipping, framing, insurance, staff time, rent, marketing, fair costs, and the cost of selling the next work. The gallery's role is not to move a box from one room to another. It is to create the conditions under which the box becomes desirable. That is why representation is the first hidden money layer. A strong gallery does not merely sell existing demand. It manufactures market structure. It chooses which artists to represent, which works to show, which collectors receive access, which museums see the work, which critics write about it, and which institutions begin treating the artist as historically important. The gallery is building a ladder of legitimacy. When that ladder works, the gallery's economics improve without the physical object changing. The artist's prices rise. Waiting lists form. Collectors become more willing to buy unseen. Museums request loans. Auction houses begin tracking the work. Every successful placement makes the next placement easier. The painting is the visible object. The invisible product is confidence. But even that is not the deepest layer. That title belongs to the relationship network. High-end art is sold through trust, and trust compounds slowly. A collector does not want the gallery with the loudest advertisement. They want the gallery that knows what they like, remembers what they own, understands their budget without insulting them, and can tell them when a work is genuinely important rather than merely expensive. The gallery becomes a private market-making service for people who want access before everyone else. The owner is not paid only for finding art. They are paid for filtering uncertainty. This is why private viewings, dinners, studio visits, museum loans, and discreet conversations matter. They look like hospitality. They are also distribution infrastructure. A collector who attends a studio visit may buy a work years later. A museum director who borrows a painting may change the artist's entire market. A dinner where 3 collectors meet can create more value than a month of public advertising. The gallery sells access, but it also sells timing. And then there is the secondary market, where the economics become even stranger. If a gallery has the right relationships, it can source a work at one price and place it with a buyer at another. It may earn a commission without holding inventory, or it may buy a work outright when it believes the market has mispriced it. The risk is obvious. If the gallery buys at the wrong moment, the painting becomes a very expensive opinion. If it buys the right work before demand accelerates, the gain can transform the business. But the best secondary dealers do not rely on guessing. They rely on information. They know which collectors are selling, which estates are being settled, which artists are entering museum collections, which auction estimates are unrealistic, and which works have been quietly requested by serious buyers. They see the market before the public sees the price. That is the real moat, not the wall. The information flow behind it. None of this means the business is safe. It is exposed to cycles, taste, reputation, authenticity, and the emotional volatility of wealthy buyers. The first risk is artist dependency. If one artist generates half your revenue, you may feel successful. Here's the trap. The moment one artist is most of your business, the relationship becomes the business. If the artist leaves, dies, changes galleries, gets caught in a scandal, or simply stops producing work the market wants, your revenue can collapse while your overhead remains. The second risk is the guarantee. Galleries sometimes guarantee artists a certain level of sales, advances, production budgets, or exhibition support. Guarantees can secure important relationships. They can also turn a slow exhibition into a guaranteed loss. The third risk is authentication and provenance. A work's value depends on what it is, who made it, and whether the ownership history can be defended. A forged signature, incomplete provenance, fake restoration, or disputed attribution can create lawsuits, refunds, insurance claims, and permanent reputational damage. In this market, one bad work can contaminate trust across an entire inventory. The fourth risk is market opacity. A publicly traded stock gives you a price every second. Art may have a price only when 2 people agree to transact. Auction results can create the illusion of precision, but one exceptional sale can distort an entire artist's perceived market. A gallery owner can look wealthy on paper because the inventory has appreciated, while having very little cash available. And then there is the art fair risk. The gallery spends a fortune preparing for a fair, transports millions of dollars of work, and may sell almost nothing. One week fair can damage a year's profitability. Yet skipping the fair can make the gallery invisible to the collectors who matter. The gallery is trapped between expensive visibility and expensive silence. There is also the risk of being too accessible. If every work is available to anyone with money, the gallery may maximize short-term revenue while destroying long-term desirability. High-end art depends on controlled scarcity. The gallery has to decide who gets offered what, when, and at what price. Sell the right work to the wrong buyer, and you may lose the collector who would have built a museum around the artist. This is not ordinary retail. The customer is part of the market structure. So how do experienced owners protect themselves against all of this? They stop thinking like shopkeepers and start thinking like institutions. The first move is artist diversification without becoming anonymous. The gallery needs several meaningful revenue streams, but it cannot represent 50 artists so weakly that none of them feel supported. The best galleries build a coherent program, different artists but a recognizable point of view. The program is the brand. The second move is controlling multiple markets. A gallery may operate primary exhibitions, secondary sales, publishing, editions, design collaborations, museum loans, advisory services, and digital or private viewing channels. Each layer creates a different cash cycle. Some generate immediate commissions. Others build future demand. The third move is owning the client relationship. The gallery must know collectors directly, not merely through a fair organizer or a single advisor. A collector who trusts the gallery becomes a recurring revenue source. A collector who only knows the booth at an art fair belongs to the fair. The fourth move is disciplined inventory. The strongest dealers do not buy every attractive work. They buy works where they have a clear thesis, a likely buyer, and enough liquidity to wait. They treat storage as capital with a temperature requirement. And the smartest galleries build legitimacy before they need it. Museum relationships, scholarship, catalogs, conservation, artist estates, curatorial partnerships, and transparent provenance are not decorations. They create the confidence that supports pricing when the market turns down. A gallery that only sells when everyone is excited is not a gallery. It is a weather vane. So after all of that, what does a high-end gallery actually make? Let's do the honest math, and let's do both years because the gap between them is the whole story. Here's the good year. You operate an established gallery with a respected program, a strong secondary market desk, and a client base that buys directly. Across the year, you place $25 million of art. Some sales are primary works split with artists. Some are secondary transactions where the gallery earns commissions. Some inventory is owned outright and produces larger gains. The gallery's gross revenue may land somewhere around $8 million to $10 million after artist shares and transaction structures. From that comes rent, staff, shipping, storage, insurance, production, fair costs, travel, dinners, publishing, legal work, and taxes. The gallery has a strong fair season, 2 important museum placements, and no major authenticity dispute. It may clear a healthy 7-figure operating profit. That is a genuinely excellent business. Not because the walls are full, but because trust has lowered the cost of selling. Now here's the bad year. The market turns cautious. Collectors still have money, but they delay decisions. One major artist leaves for a competitor. A key fair produces conversations, but almost no sales. A large painting sits in storage for 18 months. The gallery has already paid production expenses, staff, rent, insurance, and shipping. A buyer delays payment. A provenance issue appears in a secondary market work, forcing legal review and a pause in the sale. Revenue falls, but the gallery cannot slash expenses quickly without damaging its program. It cannot discount inventory without weakening price confidence. It cannot cancel the next exhibition without hurting artists and collectors. The same gallery that cleared $2 million in the good year can burn through millions in the bad one. The difference between those 2 years is not whether rich people stopped liking art. The difference is confidence, liquidity, relationships, and whether the gallery's reputation is strong enough to keep collectors buying while everyone else waits. That's the volatility trap. The objects are rare. The expenses are recurring. So, is it worth it? This is not a business for someone who wants a glamorous room and a percentage of expensive paintings. It demands capital, patience, scholarship, taste, diplomacy, legal discipline, and the ability to spend years building demand for work that may not sell this season. You are running a showroom, a logistics company, a publishing house, a private advisory service, and a reputation management system, all while trying to persuade artists that you are building their future rather than merely monetizing their present. You are negotiating with collectors who want access, artists who want loyalty, museums that want loans, auction houses that want inventory, insurers that want documentation, and critics who can change the conversation with one paragraph. But for the people who survive that gauntlet, a high-end gallery can become one of the most defensible businesses in the luxury economy. The best galleries compound trust. Trust attracts artists. Artists attract collectors. Collectors create sales records. Sales records attract museums. Museums create legitimacy. Legitimacy raises demand. Demand makes the next exhibition easier to sell. That is the gallery's virtuous loop. It is also why the real asset is difficult to copy. Anyone can rent a white room. Few can build a generation of collector relationships, artist loyalty, institutional credibility, and market knowledge without destroying the trust that makes the whole thing work. Because that's the thing the fantasy gets exactly backwards. You pictured a business that makes money by hanging expensive art on expensive walls. The walls were never really the product. They are the stage for something far more valuable. Confidence in what matters, access to what is scarce, and a network of people willing to believe the next important work is already in the room. The artwork carries the price. The gallery carries the trust. The gallery that understands it can compound for decades, one artist, one collector, and one carefully placed work at a time. The gallery that thinks it is merely taking a commission discovers the truth too late. A high-end art gallery is not a store for expensive objects. It is a private market that happens to have walls,